The night was colder than death itself. At 19, Ethan stood before a cabin no one dared enter. Locals whispered it swallowed men whole, that its walls hid something too dangerous to speak aloud. But Ethan wasn't looking for treasure, he was looking for survival. What he found inside would not only rewrite his future, it would expose a secret buried for decades, one that powerful men would kill to protect. Ethan Cole had never known the warmth of a real home. His childhood was a series of temporary roofs and borrowed kindness, each one collapsing under the weight of neglect. On his 19th birthday, the last fragile shelter shattered. His foster father shoved a duffel bag into his chest and slammed the door behind him. The snow swallowed Ethan whole, biting through his thin jacket, reminding him that in Coldwater, Montana, survival was not a gift, it was a test. For days, Ethan lived in the rusted shell of his pickup truck. The heater had long since died, so he stuffed rags into the windows and prayed the wind wouldn't find him. He ate stale crackers, washed in gas station sinks, and learned how invisible a boy could be when the world decided he didn't matter. But invisibility has its advantages. One night, hunched in the corner of a diner, nursing a single cup of coffee he couldn't afford, Ethan scrolled through a classifieds app on his cracked phone. That's when he saw it. County auction, parcel 317B, starting bid $2, unsafe, condemned. It wasn't listed as a home, just structure, a word stripped of comfort, stripped of promise, yet something about it pulled at him. 2 acres of wilderness, a cabin no one wanted. The next morning, Ethan walked into the courthouse, his clothes stiff with cold, his eyes rimmed with exhaustion. Developers in polished boots laughed when he raised his hand. "Kid, that cabin'll eat you alive," one sneered. But Ethan didn't flinch. For 2 crumpled bills, he bought a ruin. For the first time in his life, he owned something. What he didn't know was that the cabin wasn't just broken wood and stone, it was a vault, and inside it held a secret powerful enough to change everything. The road to Black Hollow Ridge was less a road than a test of endurance. Ethan's truck groaned as snow clawed at its tires, branches scraped against the doors, and silence pressed in from every side. The GPS cut out miles back, leaving him with only a paper map and the gnawing uncertainty of whether he was driving toward salvation or madness. When the forest finally opened, Ethan stopped dead in his tracks. There it was. The cabin stood like a wounded animal, hunched against the wind. Its porch sagged dangerously. The roof had collapsed on one side, and shards of glass clung to the window frames like jagged teeth. Yet beneath the ruin there was something undeniable, a strange dignity in the massive logs, the hand-carved beams, the stone chimney that rose defiantly against the sky. Whoever had built this place hadn't just wanted shelter, they had wanted permanence. Inside, the air was heavy with damp rot and something metallic, like old copper. Furniture lay shattered, newspapers melted into pulp, and snow had carved a white pyramid through a hole in the ceiling. Ethan's boots crunched against broken glass as he explored, his breath fogging in the freezing air. Then he saw it. In the kitchen, beneath a layer of grime, was a reinforced iron hatch set into the floorboards. Not a crawl space, not storage. This was something else, something built to keep people out. That night, Ethan lay by the fireplace, the flames flickering against the stone. He tried to convince himself the cabin was just a ruin, nothing more. But as the wind howled through the cracks, he heard it. Thump, thump, from beneath the hatch. His blood ran cold. The locals warned him, if you hear knocking in the walls, don't knock back. Ethan gripped the crowbar he had stolen years ago, his knuckles white. He didn't knock, he didn't sleep. He sat awake until dawn,
staring at the shadows, knowing the cabin was more than wood and stone. It was alive, and it was waiting. Ethan couldn't ignore the hatch any longer. For nights he had listened to the thumping beneath the floorboards, convincing himself it was just the house settling, or maybe a raccoon trapped below. But deep down he knew better. The cabin wasn't just a ruin, it was hiding something. On the fifth night, armed with a lantern and a crowbar, he pried the iron ring loose. The hatch groaned open, releasing a breath of air that smelled not of rot, but of paper and dust, the scent of something preserved. He descended the concrete steps, each one colder than the last, until he reached the bottom. The basement was no ordinary cellar. It was a workshop frozen in time. Pegboards lined the walls, tools hung untouched, and drafting tables sagged under the weight of yellowed blueprints. But the strangest thing was the floor, a mosaic of thousands of tiles arranged in a spiral pattern. At its center stood a pedestal with a lever locked by a crystal keyhole. Ethan's pulse quickened. He rifled through drawers, finding sketches of hidden compartments, hollow beams, and false walls. Then, in a metal cabinet, he discovered a leather-bound journal. The handwriting was jagged, frantic. "She wants to leave. I can't let her take the prototype. It is hidden where no one will look. Trust the geometry." The words echoed in his mind. Trust the geometry. Following the spiral pattern, he pressed against a brick in the far wall. It sounded hollow. He chipped away the mortar, revealing a velvet box. Inside was a crystal key that fractured the lantern's light into rainbows.
With trembling hands, he inserted it into the pedestal. The lever shifted. The wall groaned, sliding open to reveal a hidden chamber. Inside, golden clockwork machines gleamed in the lantern light. Birds with mechanical wings, a man of brass seated at a desk, gears that turned without power. But at the center sat a small metal box. Ethan opened it. Inside were blueprints for a kinetic energy storage device decades ahead of its time. Not treasure, not gold, something far more valuable, technology that could change the world. And then, upstairs, the front door slammed open. Heavy boots thundered across the floor. Voices barked orders. They weren't here for the cabin. They were here for him. At this moment, Ethan realized he hadn't just bought a cabin. He had bought a secret, powerful enough to change the world. And if you're still watching right now, it means you believe in stories of resilience, mystery, and truth. So pause for a moment, hit that subscribe button, because the next twist might be the one you never saw coming. The cabin was no longer silent. Ethan froze as the front door upstairs slammed open, the sound reverberating through the rotting beams. Heavy boots thundered across the floorboards, each step shaking dust loose from the ceiling above. Voices followed, sharp, commanding, familiar. "Find him. The old man said the kid has the journal." Ethan's stomach dropped. That voice belonged to his foster father. The man who had thrown him into the snow was now inside the cabin, and he wasn't alone. Two others moved with him, their footsteps heavier, their tone colder. These weren't neighbors. They were hunters. Ethan's lantern flickered as he pressed himself against the wall of the hidden chamber. His mind raced. He had the blueprints clutched to his chest, but there was only one way out, the stairs leading back to the kitchen where the intruders were already searching. If they found the hatch, he was finished. Then he remembered the journal. Trust the geometry.
He sprinted back to the pedestal, the crystal key still lodged in its slot. He twisted it counterclockwise. A hiss of compressed air filled the basement. Suddenly, gas lamps ignited along the walls with a soft whoosh, bathing the chamber in eerie golden light. The intruder stopped moving. "Did you hear that?" one barked. "Gas! He's trying to blow us up!" Ethan's heart pounded. He yanked a second lever labeled ventilation. The cabin roared alive. Gears clanked, vents screamed, and dust exploded from the walls. The noise was deafening, like the house itself was tearing apart. Upstairs, panic erupted. "It's collapsing!" someone shouted. Using the chaos, Ethan scanned the blueprints scattered across the drafting table. His eyes traced the lines, desperate for escape. There, a coal chute marked on the north wall. He shoved aside a heavy shelf, revealing a small iron hatch. He crawled inside, scraping his elbows raw against the narrow metal shaft. Above him, moonlight glimmered faintly. He clawed upward, every inch a battle against decades of coal dust. Then, hands grabbed his ankle. His foster father's voice snarled from below. "Gotcha, boy." Ethan kicked wildly, his heel connecting with bone. A crunch, a scream. The grip loosened. With one final surge of strength, he slammed his shoulder against the frozen hatch above. Ice shattered. The door burst open. He tumbled into the snow, gasping for air, clutching the blueprints against his chest. Behind him, flashlights cut through the trees as the men poured out of the cabin, hunting him like prey. Ethan ran into the forest, the cold slicing into his lungs. He wasn't just running for survival anymore. He was running with the secret, a secret worth killing for. By dawn, Ethan's body was failing. His legs dragged through the snow. His lungs burned with every breath, and frost gnawed at his skin. Yet he pressed forward, clutching the blueprints against his chest like a lifeline. The forest finally broke, spilling him out onto the asphalt of the main highway. A truck hauling timber screeched to a halt. The driver leaned out, eyes wide. "Jesus, kid, you look like death." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, take me to the police." The warmth of the Pine Bluff Sheriff Station was overwhelming. Wrapped in a wool blanket, Ethan sat trembling, sipping cocoa handed to him by a deputy. For the first time in days, he felt human again. He handed the journal and blueprints to Sheriff Dalton, a man with a thick mustache and weary eyes. Dalton flipped through the frantic entries, his brow furrowing. "This isn't just a cabin, son. This is evidence. And if what you're saying is true, your foster father isn't just after you. He's working for people who want this technology buried." Before Ethan could respond, the station door swung open. His foster father entered, nose taped, eyes bruised, flanked by a lawyer in a tailored suit. "Officer, my client is here to file a report. His runaway stepson stole property and assaulted him last night." Ethan shot to his feet, the blanket falling away. "He broke into my cabin. He tried to kill me." The lawyer smirked. "Your cabin. You're a minor. You don't own anything." "I'm 19, and I have the deed." Dalton raised a hand, silencing the room. "This isn't civil court. This is a criminal investigation. Breaking into a dwelling is a felony, and your client's injuries match the boy's story of self-defense."
The lawyer's smile faltered. "We have an injunction. The county failed to disclose a lien. We're seizing any intellectual property found on the premises." Dalton's eyes hardened. "Not in my town, you're not. You want to fight over patents? Take it to federal court. But right now, I see a kid who survived an attempted murder." The tension hung heavy. Ethan realized then that the cabin's secret wasn't just valuable, it was dangerous. Powerful men wanted it silenced, buried, erased, and he was the only one who had solved the puzzle. Dalton leaned forward, his voice low. "Son, you've stumbled into something bigger than you know, but you're not alone anymore. We'll protect you, and if this invention is real, it could change everything." Ethan looked down at the blueprints, the lines and symbols etched decades before. He had bought the cabin for $2, but what he had truly purchased was a war between truth and silence. Ethan didn't walk away with gold. He walked away with something far more dangerous, the truth. And sometimes the truth is worth more than fortune. If this story gripped you, if you felt the chill of the wind and the weight of his choices, then join us. Subscribe now, because the next story might just be yours.